Today's podcast is sponsored by The Morning Navigator, a daily newsletter written by Tony Greer, who is a 30-year veteran trader in the financial markets. I think it's important to be responsible with your personal finances and investments, and it's hard to do that without understanding the markets. Now, this is where The Morning Navigator fills a specific need for me. If you're looking for actionable trade ideas or simply to educate yourself about the markets, then The Morning Navigator will help you to do both. It's an interesting, informative, and amusing daily read. Now, a subscription to The Morning Navigator normally costs $60 a month or $650 per year. However, my listeners can go to tgmacro.com, sign up for a free 1-week trial, and apply the code Zuby, Z-U-B-Y, at checkout for a discount of either $10 off the $60 a month subscription or $100 off the $650 annual subscription. As you can infer, the annual subscription is a better deal. Either one is a win when it comes to understanding the global markets and managing your personal investments. So once again, you can sign up today for a free trial at tgmacro.com. tgmacro.com. Go check it out. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I would like to welcome you back to the Real Talk with Zuby podcast. Now, on today's episode, we have got on a well-known YouTuber. Her name is Arielle Scarcella. So welcome to the show, Arielle. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am blessed and highly favored, as always. So,
That sounds good.
So I've just done like a super brief intro there, but why don't you let my listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
I'm a lesbian, a basic lesbian, because nowadays you have to be like 10 other labels, right, to be relevant. But no, I'm just a basic lesbian. I've been making content on YouTube for 10 years, and over the past 5 years, I would say I became more about LGBT and not just the L.
Mm-hmm.
So I started branching out, and now I start covering more quote controversial topics, which is probably how you found me.
Mm-hmm.
And I stand up for my first concern is always women. So
Okay.
I stand up for females, and then of course I get hate for it. But that's
Okay.
where I'm at right now.
Okay, awesome. So I've got a couple of questions there. The first thing that struck my mind, I'm just gonna speak out on what touched my mind is I noticed that the first thing, of course, you said there is that you're lesbian, which
Mm-hmm.
I know you are. I am curious, in a sense, as to why that would be the first core or sort of primary thing about yourself that you'd bring up. Is that based on your work, or is that just sort of how you feel that it's something that you sort of primarily identify with?
Both. I mean, my work is like my life right now.
Sure.
I don't have a relationship. I'm single. And most of the time, even when I do go out, if I go to an event or something, it's usually an LGBT focused event. And that's not because LGBT people are obsessed with being gay. It's because we like being around people that understand us, and most of us do eventually want to find a partner.
Sure.
But yeah, I mentioned that I'm a lesbian because that's what my content revolves around. Yeah. It's not like I like meet somebody and I'm like, hey, I'm Arielle, I'm a lesbian. They're like, okay. I'm like, well, it's like, no, like, hey, what's up? Like, I usually say I'm Italian. I'm from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it interesting because I find I'm generally curious as to what sort of features or things about someone they sort of choose to bring to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you even see it in like social media bios and stuff, right? Some people.
Oh my God. Yeah, but those annoy me. Like mine, I feel like I have to say it because it's my business.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I have to say it. Like I say, like women empowerment, LGBT, rational LGBT. I think I changed it. Want to hear a funny story?
Go ahead.
So I don't know if you know who Tara Babcock is. She's another YouTuber, like more sexually explicit. I love her stuff. She's hilarious. Straight girl. And she's out in Las Vegas, and I went to hang out with her and my friend Paige, who's an adult film star, was an adult film star. And I had never met either of them, but I had been friends with Paige for like 2 years now. And Paige showed Tara, she's like, oh, this girl, she's lesbian. She's coming in. She would love to make videos with us, about, sex positivity, body positivity, women, whatever it was. I had ideas that I wanted to film with them about stuff. And Tara didn't know who I was, and she checked me out. And when I met her, she's like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you're not one of those crazy LGBT people, like the SJWs. She's like, I saw LGBT and women empowerment in your bio on Twitter, and I automatically assumed you were one of those crazy people. And I was like, this is what, and that was honestly the last straw that prompted me to make that video that went viral.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
that was the last straw. I don't mention that in the video, but
yeah.
when I can't even say LGBT anymore without people assuming that I'm part of that crazy cult.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm a free thinker. Like I'm an independent thinker. I don't like most of what the left is saying these days.
Yeah.
Some of it, obviously, you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that's really interesting because I am not somebody who tries to, like, I don't like labeling myself. So I don't, on any of my bios, I'll put in what I do. Like, you know, I'm a rapper, I'm a podcaster, I'm an author, I'm a public speaker, but I don't put in like my religion, my politics, my views on this, my views on that. Like, I don't put all that stuff up front. You know, if people follow me for a while, or they listen to my podcast, or they get to know me, all of that stuff will come out the woodwork, and I'm not shy about it. But like I was saying earlier, yeah, I just think it's interesting because, and one of the reasons I avoid doing that is I think sort of what you're feeling, which is that whether positive or negative, people have their prejudices and their stereotypes and things they've experienced. For example, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of, there's something I coined on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is called #Zuby's Razor. And that is that if someone has their pronouns in their Twitter bio, then there's like
avoid at all costs.
Yeah, there's like a 99% chance that they're just going to be crazy.
Oh, 100%.
And I don't want that to be true, but it
is
always reinforces itself.
Every time. That's why I don't have mine in my, like, I don't have my pronouns in my bio. Like, to me, I understand the point of trying to normalize it, right? Because not everybody that's trans passes, unfortunately, right? Some people do it, you know, they start to transition years in their 40s, and they're not going to pass. You know, I have a friend that's a trans woman. She doesn't pass. For her, it would be helpful to put she, her. So it's like, oh, okay, like, I get it. Even though she doesn't look, quote, like a woman, you know, she puts that in to help people understand her. And other people are doing that to normalize it, to not single, trans people out. But it also becomes annoying. And I think Blair White said it best. It's like, oh, no, it was a ContraPoints. She's like, I don't want to go into every situation announcing my pronouns. Like, what was the point of me transitioning in the first place then?
Yeah.
You know, and I get that. It's like, it's weird. Yeah. But the pronoun thing.
It is weird because there's also this authoritarian streak around it, right? Of trying to control other people's language. I mean, one point that never seems to get brought up on the whole pronoun thing is that if you're speaking to somebody, you don't use their pronouns anyway, right? So to me, it's even a weirder form of language control because you're trying to control not even what people are saying to you, but if they're speaking about you in a group setting or
to somebody else,
in a third person setting, it's like trying to control that when you may not even be part of the conversation. And I mean, I don't know if you saw, I don't know when you started following me, but I mean, I got temporarily suspended off Twitter a couple of weeks ago because someone said something and I said, okay, dude. Yeah. And
I saw that.
I didn't even know who I was responding to. I just said it like, yeah, whatever. I wasn't, like that.
I didn't even know that dude was a gendered term.
No, the whole thing the whole thing was just so bizarre. And it wasn't even, I don't know, I could talk about that for a while, but it does seem like in that case and a lot of others, people are, really weaponizing a lot of this stuff. It seems like that's what's sort of been happening to you as well, is that
100%.
Yeah, it's weird, there are people who certainly, I think, do have good intentions. Maybe the way they're going about things isn't the way that I think that they should. But there do also seem to be, I don't know the percentage, but there do seem to be a lot of people, especially the loud people and the type who will put it in their Twitter bio. And it does seem to be a sort of weaponization and a way to sort of control and also punish other people if they don't go along with exactly what rules you want them to. And these rules seem to be changing every couple of months. I can't. I mean, I'm not remotely part of this world, but as someone who gets attacked by that world a lot, especially over the past year,
which is really funny because you're Black, so you already have like some oppression points, right? You think they would go a little easier on you, yeah, but you are male and you are assumingly straight. So
what is it? You
don't have oppression points in that.
Exactly. What was that thing? The straight Black men are the new straight white
the white men of whatever.
Men.
Oh my God. But that's true. I saw you mention that. But it's true. It's like these people, okay, like the whole thing that you were saying, it's like they are obsessed with being the most woke and the most morally superior. And when we say that, we mean, you know, everybody is valid, everybody's accepted, everybody is beautiful, but it's like, sometimes they're not though. You know, sometimes people are shitty people
Yeah.
and you got to call them out, you know, and sometimes, you know, like the healthy at every size, like I don't agree with that movement completely either. I'm not going to say that publicly. No, it's not true. I'm not going to say it publicly. Like, you can put this in the podcast, it's fine. But like publicly on my channel, I'm not going to say it yet because I don't want to hurt people's feelings. Because I know a lot of women have body insecurities, and I don't think me being like, well, that's not, you know, it doesn't offer anything positive to the conversation. So instead of saying how bad that idea is, what I'll do is I highlight people that are doing it how I think is right.
Okay.
You know, like I had a friend that has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she has like her skin. She's 27 years old. She looks like she's 80.
Okay.
Her skin just, it like literally like looks like it's falling off of her. But she's a beautiful woman, and she stands for that's body positivity. Like it's she's healthy, but she can't do anything about what is happening to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, as someone who's really, really into health and fitness, the whole body positivity, fat acceptance thing, I do. Okay, let me not mix the two up because I think that they are two different things. I think that they get conflated.
That's true.
But the whole sort of celebrating and glorifying of obesity thing, I find really disturbing, and it's not something that for any sort of political correctness points I'm willing to back down on, because, you know, people need firstly, I don't think, one thing that's really concerning with a lot of stuff that's going on right now in the modern Western world is this sort of people trying to control each other's thoughts and speech and language and everything, but then also the people trying to force others to totally deny facts or totally suspend reality, you know, and that's where it really disturbs me. It's like, well, whether or not you like a fact is a fact, right? It's a fact that being obese shortens people's lifespan, gives them more risk of heart disease, certain types of cancer, diabetes. Like, we know the facts, right? Just like we know the facts with smoking. We know the facts if you're shooting heroin every weekend. So this idea that you can't say this fact because it might upset some people. On one hand, I get where people are coming from, and you can certainly state things in a way that's not intentionally abrasive, but to totally deny it and say, oh no, you can be healthy at any size, you know, oh, there's no link between obesity and not be, I'm like, that's a lie. And it's not just a lie, it's a lie that actually people are saying people. Like, me telling the facts is going to get people killed. I'm like, you lying to people is going to get people killed, right? That's the crazy part of it. But people want to criticize the person who tells the truth, and that seems to be happening.
Oh, 100%. And that's you and me. Like, I feel like, I feel like that's the big thing right now. It's like you're right. Like, they're trying to police people's language. They're trying to control every scenario that you could think of. Like, who was it recently that the Pete Buttigieg, you know, nothing is good enough for these people.
Or they say even he's not gay enough?
He wasn't gay enough. It's like, why? Because he was white, and because he was like a little bit more masculine of center, like
masculine of center.
That's what they say. I know. Because he was like, I know it's so dumb, but that's what they would say. It's like, but it makes sense. Like, that term doesn't bother me too much because she's saying like he's less feminine, he's more, you know, masculine gay dude. I think anyway, from what I saw of him. But like he's not gay enough. He's not queer enough. Nothing is good enough for these people. Like, when I did that panel in Sydney, Australia, that got canceled. Well, it got banned from Sydney Mardi Gras because, quote, I was transphobic. I'm a transphobe. Not because the panel was actually transphobic or anything. According to them, even trans people are transphobic.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'll tell you what, you know, I want to...
Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was.
Go ahead.
I got it. Sorry. There wasn't enough diversity on even on our panel, even though it was supposed to be the only lesbian event, which is sad in itself, right? You have LGBT pride and there's only one lesbian event, and it was a panel. Okay. It wasn't even a party. And they were telling us that we weren't diverse enough. It's like, how about we just let the lesbians have their one little event and leave them the hell alone?
No.
But even when we had a more diverse panel, people were still bitching. They were
It
like, well,
doesn't.
how
It
come
doesn't.
there's not a trans lesbian? We were like, there is. Well, how come there's not a disabled lesbian? How come there's not a
Yeah.
black lesbian? And the girl that put
They
the
should have
thing
brought
on,
me on.
yeah, you could be like, didn't you identify as a woman for a little bit or something?
Yeah,
Like,
that's when my career like really sort of spiked upwards, in fact.
did it really?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, people
I mean,
started hating on you for that. But
oh
it's like,
boy.
listen, you're pointing out the faults in the system.
Yeah.
That's
Yo,
really what you're doing. You're not making fun of trans people. You're
no,
saying, look, this is a bad way of going about things, is really what you're saying.
look, my deadlift tweet, I mean, before I tweeted that, I had 19,000 followers on Twitter, and I've now gained 200,000 since
That's
identifying as a
amazing.
woman. So, I mean, everyone who doesn't think female privilege is real, I mean, that's something that I highly
Yeah, I mean,
recommend to
show a little
people.
tit, and then you're gonna get another few thousand followers.
I
Show
didn't
some
I didn't
tits.
do that because I didn't want to reinforce any gender stereotypes.
That's true.
Some
That's
people were
true.
like, you should have worn makeup, you should have worn a dress. I was like, no, you bigots.
No,
I am
bigots.
stunning and beautiful as I am. Some people are like, you should have shaved off your beard. I was like, no, why
Some
should
women
I?
have beards,
Exactly. Exactly.
like two, like two women have beards.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am really curious on your part here because I'm someone who is, I don't like to use the left right spectrum and all these labels and stuff, but and I also think that in the 2020s, I did post up a tweet which went sort of viral a couple weeks ago where I said that in this decade, all sane people are going to become inverted commas conservative. And I think that is truly, truly going to happen because I think
It's
with a
already
lot,
happening.
yeah, with a lot of the stuff that's going on and continually seeing people like waking up, a lot of people who previously would have been more associated with being more left of center is they're suddenly finding themselves. It's like this whole thing's just shifted and maybe their own positions haven't moved much, but they're now finding themselves having more stuff in common with like conservatives and libertarians and
Oh my
other
God,
classical liberals. Yeah.
it's true. Yeah, like I'm hanging out with this guy tomorrow. Well, tomorrow or the next day on Friday, I think. And we're gonna like shoot guns. And I'm not necessarily pro gun. I'm
Yeah.
not like I've never even shot a gun. I don't know what
Oh,
the
you'll
hell's
love
going
it.
on.
You'll love it.
But like I think it's important because we always say like, okay, these people need to understand us. They need to listen to us. Well, maybe we need to listen to them.
Yeah.
And that's the point of me going out there and like, we're going to probably shoot a video and it's probably going to be called like lesbian meets conservative. I don't know, like something.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't get a lot of views, like it's the point, right?
Mm.
We have to, there's such a big divide in the US and especially in the UK. It's
In
from
the
what I
UK
understand
too,
too.
yeah.
It's even
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
There's so much of a divide between like quote conservatives and liberals.
Mm.
And somebody recently just told me about like the horseshoe thing
Oh yeah,
and how
that's
like
very true.
I was like, oh my God, this is accurate because so for people that don't people that are listening that don't know what I'm talking about, there's like a horseshoe like graph, I guess you call it, and it says the people in the center are at the top of the horseshoe, and as you go down on either side you get to the bottom, you get to the left and the right, and those are actually way closer than people would assume.
Yeah.
And it's true because the extreme right people are homophobic and the extreme left people are becoming homophobic. It's kind of
And
wild.
they're very racist too. I'll tell you that off the top. Yeah. Like
in the opposite way that you would expect, like they're racist against white people.
Oh, they're racist against black people too.
Are they?
Oh gosh.
If you don't go along with what they're saying.
Oh
right?
my gosh. I mean, I've been talking about this for like over a decade, and I feel like people now finally get what I mean. Because I mean, I'm not someone who's ever shifted politically. Like by UK and American standards, I would be mostly considered conservative / libertarian. Although I'm not I'm not down the line on anything. I mean, I was born in England, grew up in Saudi Arabia. My family's from Nigeria. In Saudi Arabia, I'm like almost a progressive. In Nigeria, I'm like a liberal. And then in the UK, people are like, oh, you're so conservative. And so to me, it's always kind of funny because my views are the same in every country, you know, which is mostly live and let live, generally sort of small government. You know, I've got a couple issues that I'm like pretty strong on, but generally, you know, I think that coalition, when I was saying that thing about people becoming sort of conservative just by being sane, is I think it's people who just uphold the same basic principles. And when I say really fundamental principles, I mean like freedom of speech. I mean like live and let live. I mean the ability to have a conversation and have a disagreement and not, you know, hurl insults and want to attack the
Hmm.
other person, whether that's physically, verbally, cancel them, get them to lose their jobs, like all
Oh,
that stuff.
100%.
Yeah,
And I think people really are starting to wake up to this, because when you see things that are happening in your country right now, um, I think some of them have happened here too, but mostly in the UK, from what I understand. People that, trans activists, and I say that like as a broad term, because most of them aren't even trans, right?
sure.
But these insane progressive liberal activists are attacking, literally attacking, like physical assault, physically assaulting 60-year-old women
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for having conversations in a basement in a library
Yeah.
about how these new gender laws are going to affect women,
Yep.
affect females. Like, how that doesn't make any sense. And I think any sane person is going to be like, okay, like, why is this 20-year-old male who might be like gender fluid or something, like,
Yeah.
fine, do what you got to do. Why are you attacking a woman, a 60-year-old woman nonetheless,
Yeah.
for simply like questioning how the law is changing and how it
Yeah.
might not serve her anymore?
It just amazes me how you can flip the whole oppression hierarchy upside down by simply like identifying as a woman. So
Oh,
you could
100%.
be like the straightest, whitest, malest person, and then
Mm-hmm.
you could just tomorrow just say that you're like a trans woman of color, and suddenly you've just flipped the
You've
entire
gained all
board.
the points.
And,
Yep.
and
You've gained all the points.
you can roll into women's changing rooms, you can beat them up in their sports, you can
It's
you can do
true.
whatever you want with impunity. And I just find that whole thing like incredible. I'm just looking at it like, wow, how have people let this happen?
It's, I really don't know how it happened, to be honest. I mean, part of me wants to believe that people meant well. But at the same time, I'm like, how do they think this is any good?
Yeah, especially when you
Like,
see the stuff in
it's so
sports and
obvious.
prisons.
That's, and when I talked about that, I got hate for, for me claiming, people were claiming that I was even more transphobic than I already was,
Mm,
because I was positioning trans women and saying that they're, sex offenders and criminals. And I'm like, that's not what I said, first of all. But yeah, some trans women might be criminals, just like
mhm,
some lesbians might be criminals, some gay guys, whatever. But the whole point of I made a video called, I forget what it was called, but it was about how these male sex offenders are identifying as women, and sometimes going on
mhm.
hormones, but not actually having any sex changes, like physically, um, like down there anyway.
Yeah.
And being, either resentenced or let out early, or just, they'll go to, they'll be placed in women's prisons. And it's like,
Mhm.
how do people not see this as an issue?
Yeah, it's so weird to me. I mean, it's so weird to me. I mean, I have a lot of criticisms of the last few decades of feminism in some big ways. Um, but I find it really funny that over the past year, especially, I get involved in certain conversations and things, and I'm like, how am I? I'm the one who's being the actual feminist in a lot of these situations. In a lot of these
I know, you're
conversations, I'm
right.
like, for all my own criticisms, I'm the one who's like actually willing to draw some boundaries and be like, no, actually, that's not a good idea. That's not fair. Like, no, that's not cool. Like, I shouldn't
It's
be.
crazy.
Yeah, sure, I did my deadlifting, but I mean, it was so funny. I mean, I think you didn't see my deadlifting until quite recently, but when it was
Right.
blowing up, it was crazy because like a lot of people, like 90% of people just thought it was hilarious. But then
Right.
the people who wanted to be angry at me, it was sort of coming from two angles. So some people were like, hey, you're not really a woman. What you're doing is unfair towards women. Like, you're
Right.
not, all that. And it's like,
Right. Of course.
I'm looking
And
at
then
it
the
like, okay, you've kind of got the point, but also sort of missed it here. And then
right.
other people are
Exactly.
like, oh, this guy's he's transphobic, he's this and that. And I'm like, well, I identified as a woman. You told me these are the rules. So
Right.
how you're now the one who's being transphobic by your
You
own
are.
definition. So
Yeah.
it was a really interesting thing just to sort of see all the different reactions and see how people responded to it.
Oh, 100%. It was like when Trisha Paytas came out as transgender,
Oh yeah.
and people were like, she's not trans, da 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 da. And I'm like, by your definition, all
Why
like,
not?
this is what you did. Like,
Yeah,
you
why not?
guys made this, that this is okay.
Yeah.
And do I think she's trans? No, I don't think she's trans. Like,
I
but
do. I have a question. I mean,
mhm,
what this is going to sound. I mean, we're at the stage where we need to sort of like redefine basic terms again in the Western world, which
yes.
also really weirds me out. But I mean, what does someone actually being trans? What does that? I mean, you might not know the formal definition, but to
Hmm.
you, I mean, what does that? what does that mean? I mean, what's the difference between someone just literally saying, oh, I identify as whatever, and
Hmm.
someone being legitimately trans? I mean, how do we know? How do you tell? Like, what are the lines?
See, the reason this is so tricky is because it's mental. And you can't see what's going on in somebody's head necessarily. So how are you going to tell somebody that they don't feel that way, right?
Yeah.
That's how people are able to take advantage of it. If there was a way, I mean, there have been some studies that show that trans people's brains look different. You know, they look more similar to, like, if it's a trans woman, they look more, like her brain will look more similar to mine
I thought I've
compared
been
to
told that
yours, right?
men and women don't have different brains.
Well, no, and that's true too, right? There's conflicting studies, but there's like a certain part of the brain or something that
Yeah.
kind of looks the same.
No, men
I don't
and women
remember.
do have different brains, but I'm
They
saying
do.
from a lot of the same people, they're also the ones claiming that men and women have no brain differences.
Yeah, I know it's just ridiculous because there are conflicting studies, and I'm not like an
Yeah.
expert on this. But I have seen friends of mine like suffering with dysphoria, like, and I
Sure.
know that they're not lying. So whatever it is, whatever the reason that it's happening, it is legitimate, at least for them,
Hmm.
I think. Um, and it sucks, but
Sure.
it doesn't. What was the original question you asked? What does trans mean? I think
Yeah,
trans.
I mean, how do you? My question was, how
It's
do you
tricky, yeah.
separate the legitimate
The real from the one. Okay, like
versus the whatever?
the fake ones. I
Yeah.
I think that I think that they're. I think the only true way to be transgender is to have gender dysphoria.
Hmm.
But, and this is a big but, it's an internal versus external experience, right?
Hmm.
The same in the same way that a lesbian, like I was always a lesbian,
Okay.
right? At least that's what I believe. But I was living, quote, a straight lifestyle. Like I tried dating men, but internally I knew I was living in a lesbian experience still.
Okay. I want to come back to that because that's interesting. But yeah,
Yeah,
carry
yeah.
on.
Yeah. And I tried to be straight. So in the same way, I feel like it could be a trans person's experience, you know, if they're living as male, but know that they are a woman
Hmm.
and always felt, you know, slightly off. That's one way to be trans. It's internally transgender. But when you actually go through the physical changes
Mm.
and people start seeing you as the gender you identify as, right?
Yeah.
That's a completely external experience. So I think it's two different ways of two different things that we're talking about here.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting because, I mean, firstly, it's weird because it's so weird how, considering how few trans people there are as a percentage of the population, it's interesting how in
Everything's
the
about
past
them.
in the past sort of 5 to 7 years, this just has just become some new supposed civil rights frontier or something like that, which is odd. I mean, I think regardless of where people sit on the spectrum, in my personal, like, there's this idea that I think, let me take a step back. I think one problem that I find with a lot of modern day lefties is that they think that conservatives haven't moved since like the 1940s. So when
Mm-hmm.
they hear the word conservative, they're still thinking back to the people in like the 1950s conservatives or something, right?
Right. That
Like,
hate gays and don't believe
yeah,
in.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, look, there are, as we've already said, there are bigots and intolerant people across the board, no question.
Of course.
But this sort of idea that the average conservative in the UK or the USA is anti-LGBT, whatever that means, or inverted commas, hates gay people or hates trans people, or I'm like, what rock have you been living under for the past 30 years? I mean, this is just not the case. I mean, will you have some people who are like, I don't necessarily understand nor agree with nor approve of everything? Sure. But they're not going to like attack you or totally malign you. It's like, no, like people will generally, they could be the most sort of down the line conservative Christian evangelical, and they might be like, I don't agree with that, but God bless you, and I'll still treat you fairly and kindly, and that is
The
really the
type of,
norm.
yeah, that's exactly the type of quote hate that I've gotten from the right. Like if I got any hate in quotes
Yeah.
again, it was from, you know, it was just from people being like, listen, I don't necessarily agree, you know, with gay marriage, but I don't think that people should take away,
Mm.
you know, basic human rights. And it's like, okay, well, like to me, marriage is a basic human right, like, or at least like civil partnership, you know, in
Yeah.
government sense, right?
Yeah.
We're not gonna get into that, but like,
Sure.
But that's like the worst hate that I got.
Yeah.
If we even consider that hateful.
No, that's not. I don't think we should even call that hate. I just think
Yeah,
that's
but the left would call it hate. But
yeah. I
for
think that's
most of
the
the
problem, though. That's the
right,
problem, right? This idea
exactly.
that the idea that any disagreement is the result of some kind of hatred. I think that whole idea. I think that's really like burying. I don't really like to use these terms, the left, the right, the left, but
Mm.
that's really what's going to sort of bury the left side of the political spectrum. Like this
Oh,
idea that everything
yeah.
is rooted in hatred. Like it's amazing how
Mm-hmm.
many things and how many groups of people and how many things like I apparently hate. I'm like, I know myself pretty I know myself very well, and you know I've got friends who are pretty much everything. And so
Mm-hmm.
this idea of me sort of like hating any individual, let alone group, I'm just like, where is that coming from? It's just like,
Where's
oh,
that
you
belief
disagree
coming
with
from?
this thing, so it must be rooted in hate. You know, oh, you don't want to date
Mm-hmm.
someone who has a penis, so that you must hate trans people. Oh, you don't
Mm-hmm.
think a biologically born man should compete with women in boxing and MMA, so that's because you hate trans. It's like, no, like there are reasons people believe things that have nothing to do with hatred, and a lot of it is just
Mm-hmm.
based on, you know, fairness or what people think is right or wrong, whether or not people agree or
Right.
disagree.
Yeah, there was I'm trying to remember as I'm talking, I'm trying to remember the quote that I read the other day, but it was something like the left constantly mixes up empathy, like having empathy for somebody's situation versus actually I can't remember the other word, but it was there's a difference between just feeling pity or feeling empathy for somebody's situation
Hmm.
and actually fighting, not I can't remember what it is. I have
No,
to
that's
find it, but it was so brilliant. I was like,
okay.
this is their issue.
Mm,
Um, they're constantly thinking that everybody hates them,
yeah,
and it's like, no, we just disagree with you. We have empathy,
yeah,
but we don't hate you because we disagree with you.
yeah. It's really weird. It's really weird. I mean, I've had conversations with people, again, mostly online, because it's harder to misinterpret people so much in real life. But I
Right.
remember having a conversation with someone not long ago, and we were kind of just talking about income tax. Okay. And again, I'm pretty libertarian, right? I think everyone should pay less taxes. I think that a flat income tax would be more fair, right? I don't think anybody, if that person is paying 20%, I don't think that person should be paying 50 or 60%, right? I think, well,
Mm-hmm.
just make it, if you're going to have it, just make it like 25% across the board or whatever. And then this
Mm-hmm.
person started talking to me about like how I hate poor people and how I want poor people to die. And I'm just like,
They go from 0 to
yeah,
100 in a second.
it happens so quick. I'm like, oh, dude, like, I mean, and it's even funnier because I'm like very pro charity too, so it's like extra funny. I'm just like,
Right.
I'm like
You're like, if you
constantly,
only knew. Right.
yeah, I'm just like, no, I'm just talking about what I think is fair or whatever. Listen, none of my beliefs or ideas are rooted in wanting people to die or, you know, oh, if you're pro-life, it's because you hate women and you want women to die. It's like, no, like it's the opposite. You don't want unborn babies, fetuses, whatever words you want to use. Like you don't want human life to be taken. That's what it's rooted in. It's not rooted in
Right.
wanting to control women's bodies and hating. It's like, it's such a weird straw man. And I'm like, have you ever actually spoken to someone who holds these beliefs? Because really quickly you will learn that that's not what it's rooted in. Just like I
Right.
don't think that most people who are pro-choice is because they hate babies and they want to slaughter infants. It's like, no, like,
Sometimes the situation calls for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, look, can we at least sort of be fair with each other's positions here? Everyone's
Right.
talking like we need to heal the division, we need to unite, we don't want people being polarized and whatever. But at the same time, day by day, day after day, it's just sort of constantly misinterpreting people's positions on purpose, which seems to be quite malicious.
Oh yeah, it 100% is. People do that all the time.
Yeah.
They go like you said, like I said, and like you're agreeing with, like 0 to 100 in a second.
Hmm.
Even if you like the new, there's a new term like turf adjacent. Even people that are associating with me are
Oh
considered
yeah.
turfs now.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Of course. Yeah. Look, you're talking to a young black man who's been accused of being a white supremacist. So
Oh my God.
I
They
can
don't make
deal.
any sense. Like literally, like, and these, you know what the funniest thing about all this is, these kids are usually the ones that are the most privileged.
Oh, of course.
Like they sit at home all day, complain about everything.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, are they actually like in the forefront, like doing, like making any actual change, or are they just complaining online? The fact that they don't have work, or the fact that they're in school in these gender studies classes is a big privilege in itself. The fact that they can afford school, that they can afford to not work, assuming that they don't work, because they have all this time on their hands. That's the real privilege here.
Yeah.
That they're so educated, or they're the fact that they can be educated enough to see fault in the smallest things is a privilege in itself.
And it's a totally uniquely Western problem. And
100%.
mostly the Anglosphere too, not even like all of the West. It's very much UK, USA, Canada, Australia,
That's it.
New Zealand.
That's
It's the English speaking
That's it.
countries. I'm
That's
still sort of analyzing this a little bit, trying to work out what sort of happened over the last 10 years that has created this.
I don't know, but I really don't think I want to I don't want to believe that I helped make this happen. Because I was like, I mean, I still consider myself liberal. Like obviously I'm like pro LGBT, you know, to an extent though, right?
What does that mean?
To an extent, it means that
sorry, pro LGBT. What people say that? What does that mean?
It means that I'm for gay rights, gay marriage. Like I don't think that people should get kicked out of their homes for being kids should be kicked out of their homes for being gay.
Does anybody believe that though? I mean,
I don't know. I think some people. Well, there are some states in the United States that people can be fired for being gay still.
But does it happen?
For LGBT.
But does it happen?
It happens once in a while, but not as. I have to look. I really don't know, but I do know it happened to one of my friends years ago.
Really? Just literally for that?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're allowed to, because it wasn't like it was Verizon or something. Like it was a private, private owned thing, and legally they're allowed to do that. But that kind of stuff, like and as far as like trans rights, do I believe that trans people should be able to transition and legally change their gender? Yes, but at the same time, like the line is there's not even a line anymore, right? And I get the most hate for speaking out against trans people, but really it's not against anybody. It's just for women, for females. And there's a line that needs to be drawn and say, listen, like, yes, you can be seen as a woman in society, but you are still biologically male in many senses of, in many ways.
Yeah.
So if you're still presenting completely male, do you belong in women's sports? Do you belong in women's prisons? Like, no. Can you call yourself a lesbian? Yeah, but like, I don't think you should be speaking for lesbians. There's somebody in the UK that was praised by Stonewall.
I think I saw this.
Alex Drummond. Okay, I'm just gonna say they, so I'm not completely misgendering them, but like, in their mind, they said, "Oh, I present female." Like, no, you don't. Not literally, not one person walking down the street
on behalf of lesbians.
They have a beard. Yes, literally. Literally have a beard, like at least, like border, like the littlest thing that you could do.
Yeah.
That's the least of your issues. Just shave your freaking beard.
It's weird. I mean, again, I'm not a feminist, and to me, and I'm obviously not a woman, except when I identify as. But I mean, I'm somewhat offended on behalf of women in some of these cases as well.
So am I.
For whatever my views on some of the excesses of modern day feminism are, like, I have a lot of respect and admiration for women, and I recognize the difference between men and women, right? There's a lot of stuff that is pretty unique to men, which I think should be sort of highlighted and admired and uplifted by society. And there are also things that are totally unique to women, which should be admired and respected. I mean, literally, we are all born from women. Like, I know women don't like to be reduced to just the, pregnancy and giving birth thing, which is not what I'm doing. But I'm like, look,
I don't think you did.
That's a superpower. You make people, you make humans. That you literally create a human being in your body and feed a human being with your body. Like, that's amazing. And like everything that is involved in that, that's like, it's weird. Like, I'll say something like that, and some people are like, "Oh, you're being sexist." I'm like, it's the opposite, right? I'm looking at my mother. I'm one of five. I'm one of five kids. Like, I'm looking like, wow, how did you By the time my mom was my age, she had 5 children.
Oh Jesus, that's
Right?
a lot.
I have no kids yet. I can't
That's a
imagine.
lot.
You know, like, I'm looking at her now that I'm a bit older, and I'm like, wow, like you're a superwoman, and you know she's working and doing this and doing that, and I'm just like, whoa, you know. And I've got 2 sisters who also have kids. I've got sister-in-laws. I'm from a really big family, so I can very clearly see like, okay, these are like, there's a lot of overlap, but look, this is the stuff like the men do, and that's admirable, and they make these sacrifices. This is what the women do, and this is admirable, and they make these sacrifices. And I just find it so odd that society is trying to, like, I don't know, like downplay this or say that it's
They
negative or
just, I
something.
think, yeah, I think people don't like being put in boxes, but it's like, we're not putting you in a box. We're just acknowledging that biology plays a big part in a lot of this. It's
Yeah,
not all, it's not just nurture.
no,
A lot of it is nature. Um, I think that, you know, the people, there's some people out there like crazy liberals, in my opinion, that are, you know, raising their children as babies,
oh gosh,
and then they get upset when like the children naturally navigate towards one way or the other, and it's like there is a biological reason for this.
yes,
You know, it's in a weird way. It's how I knew I was gay,
yeah,
because I didn't navigate. Not that like lesbians are men. That's not what I'm saying.
hmm,
But culturally, right, it's the nurture versus nature. Like nature wise, I was a woman. I didn't have any problem with that. But culture wise, I navigated to more masculine things. And I
mm,
think that's because culturally I like feel like I fit better with men. And it turns out it wasn't that I was a man. It was just because I liked women, and usually men like women. And that's kind of, you know, I don't know if that makes sense
yeah, no,
unless you're a
no,
gay
that makes
person
total
yourself.
sense. No, that makes
It
total
was
sense.
helpful for me. It was helpful to me and to a lot of LGBT people that I know to see a
Mm.
binary,
Isn't it?
and to be like, okay, I fit more on this side or this side, you know.
I mean, isn't
To
it extra weird that, I mean, if you were growing up in this era, the thought that someone could see that and then be like, "Oh, this is actually a boy, so we need to transition." That, like, that's I
It's the
find the whole
most
thing
sexist
so.
thing ever.
I find yeah, this is the thing. I just find so many logical errors and hypocrisies and oxymorons in this whole thing. It's
It's
like
really bad.
you're supposed to hold all of these conflicting beliefs at the same
Yep.
time. You're supposed to believe that men and women are fundamentally the same and they have the same strengths and weaknesses and interests and everything, but also a man can be a woman can be a man. You can also be non-binary, or you can be fluid. There's like all of these different things, right? And then when it comes to, I don't know, what people call gender roles or gender stereotypes. So it's like, okay,
Right.
well, if you have a feminine boy, he's actually, maybe he's
A
actually a
girl.
girl. Or you have a
Maybe he's a trans
tomboy.
girl.
Yeah, you
Right.
have a tomboy. You have a girl who likes to, wrestle and play soccer. So no, she's actually a boy. Like, the whole thing to me is just like really
It's very
odd.
sexist.
It's
It's
very odd.
very sexist. Yeah. There's a difference between not fitting into stereotypical gender roles and not feeling comfortable in the body that you were born as. Because technically, gender dysphoria, really what it is sex dysphoria.
Mhm.
You feel uncomfortable in the sex that you were born as, not the gender roles that you were assigned.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, then everybody would have gender dysphoria. I would have gender dysphoria because as a woman, I'm supposed to like men and I don't. So
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not conforming to the gender roles that I'm supposed to be. So does that mean I have gender dysphoria? Like, no, it doesn't.
Mm,
It's just a term. It should be called sex dysphoria, but they call it gender dysphoria.
that's true. I mean, do you differentiate between sex and gender? I'm old school. I don't. I use the terms totally
Um,
interchangeably because I think part of
only
this
in
mess is this separation.
only in regards to trans people and quote brains.
Okay.
Because like when I say gender, what I really mean is their gender identity. Does that make sense?
It does. I just think that there's so
Yeah.
much wordplay that goes
Yeah.
on with this stuff. So I try to just speak very plainly and simply and not.
Biologically, yeah.
Yeah, I try not to get
No.
involved into too many of the games, because then you got people trying to split sex and gender roles and gender identity and gender expression, and they're all mean different things. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm look, I don't think that most things are binary, but this is like one of the few things where I'm like, look, this is a binary. Like, you could be the most feminine man in the world and you're still a man. You can be the most masculine butch woman in the world, but you're still a woman. And this isn't even unique to humanity, right? This is just like
Right.
an animal kingdom. You have male
I know
and
what
you
you're
have
saying.
female.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like no matter how much somebody transitions physically, socially, whatever, they're still going to be biologically a certain sex, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me anyway, if they make an attempt at transitioning, then I would respect, their person's identity. Like you have to give up. You have to give up. I hate the word privilege, but you have to, like, if you're a trans woman, give up your male privilege and present as a woman. Like what that really means to me is don't present as a man.
Yeah.
And the same way for trans men, don't present as a woman, because there's women privilege too, right?
Of course, yeah.
Don't present as a woman. Make an attempt. When there was a story, I think it was in the United States. Somebody wrote an article about like how it was a gay guy, and he was like, he's like the trans movement is infiltrating gay men nightclubs, and he not like it's like rampant,
Sure.
But there was a situation, he said, who knows if this was true, but I wouldn't doubt it. Apparently there was somebody that looked like me, basically, that was claiming to be a gay trans man, but they didn't want to conform to gender stereotypes.
I'm actually in my brain sort of like doing the quick math on that, like trying to work.
So I identify as a man, but I'm still attracted to men, but I look but I'm still female, so I'm a gay trans man.
Gotcha.
And like the gay men weren't having it. Like, and it's understandable. Like, you're not even you're not even on testosterone. You're not even dressing differently.
Yeah.
There's different like, it's okay for like, I'll speak for lesbians. For me anyway, it's a little bit of everything, right? It's physically, it's mentally, because women do tend to think differently than men. I don't know if that's nurture versus nature, but I just know that that's usually a fact.
Yes, it is a fact.
We tend to think differently. We're emotionally usually that doesn't mean that we're like the opposites, but like usually there's some differences, right? But it's also physically, and sometimes it's culturally. It's like the way people present and the way people act. So if you are in fact a trans guy that hasn't transitioned at all, and not even socially, so like not even dressing differently, you're still dressing typically female. Like, that's not really a thing, but you know what I mean. That's still part of sexual attraction, right?
Yeah.
Which is why like a lot of straight girls will be into super masculine women, because they look like men, and then they find out they're women that are like, oh no, I couldn't do it. But like, right, there's from far away they might look like men, and they're like, oh, so hot, but like, oh, I can't, once they take the clothes off, they have like tits, and I'm not going to be into it as a straight girl. Right? So there's different ways of being attracted to people. But if you're not making any attempt at all, how are you going to expect somebody that's homosexual to be into that?
Look, this is the thing.
It's very entitled.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about the pronoun thing already, but even when it comes to what the way people treat each other is like, look, the people make it seem really, really complicated, but it's actually pretty simple, which is that, I mean, I know that you use the term pass, but it's like, look, if you look and act and dress like a woman, 99% of people are going to refer to you as such and treat you as such, whatever that means. And vice versa, right? If I'm here and I've got like my big muscles and my luscious beard and my deep voice, and I'm here going around talking about I'm a woman, I mean, if someone sees me in the street and is like, oh, like, define that person, no one is going to be like, oh yeah, she is, it's going to be like, oh yeah, that, big black dude with a beard.
Yeah.
Like that's just the reality. People can have whatever they want in their brain, but it's like, look, the reality is that people are going to, we all know that men and women exist. You could talk to a 2-year-old and they can tell you the difference between a boy and a girl, a man and a woman, even if they couldn't define it properly, right? They just know.
Right.
And everyone goes around, sees thousands of people a day. That's what we think, right? If someone is like a trans woman, but they like legitimately look like a woman and they've sort of been through the process and everything, someone will be like, yeah, that woman over there, like she.
Right.
That's just what people will naturally do, which is, again, why I find it so weird with this whole kind of idea that you're supposed to mind read and you're supposed to just sort of, oh, you should have just known. It's like,
it's the most passive aggressive entitled thing I've ever experienced in the LGBT community. Yeah. It's really bad.
Okay. So I have a big question here. Because throughout this whole thing, you've been using a term, and I know, of course, you regularly use a term, which I don't actually use. So you've been saying LGBT community.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm interested here. I sort of have two questions here, and maybe your view on these has changed. And maybe one or both of these questions might be controversial. But number one, does the T really belong in there? Because the T seems to me be something quite different to the other three, right? One is that
Mhm.
a man who likes men, a woman who likes women, someone who likes both. But
Mhm.
then the T is not actually, it's a different category, right? It's not based on sexual attraction. So I've always been a little bit curious as to why it's sort of considered in the same category. And then my second question is it really a community? So I don't use terms like the Black community, right? If someone's,
Right. Right.
I don't use that term because I don't,
Right.
there's over 1 billion Black people in the world. I don't think there's a
Mhm.
Black community, just like I'd
Mhm.
never say the white community, right? That would be
Right.
kind of weird. And I certainly wouldn't
Mhm.
expect somebody to speak on behalf of, oh, Zuby, what does the Black community think about? I don't freaking know. Like,
Ask Black Twitter. I don't know.
yeah, let me go around Africa like with my microphone and just interview everyone. I was like, I don't know. And so, as someone who very much tries to view people as individuals rather than these
Mhm.
categories, I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on those two things.
Um, I don't think that there is an LGBT. I think there's an LGBT community, but I think it's insanely divided at the moment,
Okay.
and I think it's a generational gap. From what I understand, anyone that's under the age or like I would say 30 and under is very different from 30 and over. Like that's
Okay.
like kind of the line right now that I'm seeing. And of course, like sometimes it varies. Sometimes there'll be like an 18-year-old kid that's like, no, I'm just a lesbian. Like, leave me the hell alone. Um, and sometimes there's like an 80-year-old that's like gender fluid or something. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think
What's the
people are
gap?
also,
Sorry,
I
what's the
don't know.
difference?
I think that there are people that are, how do I explain this? It's difficult. I think it comes down to like the idea of really like with, it's so oh god, it's so
Is it kind
difficult
of
to
like
explain.
the ideology, or perhaps even the
Yes, I would.
aspiration?
Yeah, definitely. The ideology is definitely very different. Um, but I think it's more of the changing of labels and what they mean.
Okay.
You know, some people like I was on a panel, and as much as I respect the person that was on the panel with me, um, I don't agree with pretty much anything that they said on this specific topic of like what a lesbian is. But they basically said that being a lesbian is anything you want, and I said, well, in culture, that would be great, right? Because anyone could just walk around and be like, I identify as a box. Like, fine, good for you. That's what actual self ID would be, right? You're
Yeah,
the
yeah.
only person that needs to worry about how you identify, but that's not what that means.
Mm.
Self ID actually does affect everybody else, right?
Hmm.
So it's really a disingenuous term. It's worded poorly. Um, and I think, you know, it's also in regards to like law, like lesbians are a protected class, like, you know, with same-sex attracted.
Hmm.
If you change the meaning of that, like what happens like if there was a hate crime and it was a trans woman that looks like you, and that's a lesbian, all of a sudden it's not a hate crime. But like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
I
there
don't
has to
think
be a
I
line
don't
drawn.
I don't think that hate crimes in protected classes should exist, but that's another conversation.
But well, in the LGBT world,
Mm.
okay, like there are certain instances where that's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
There have been people that are like hated on and
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
actually
I just think
attacked, right?
every crime is a hate crime. I just don't think it needs a separate
Oh, I
category.
see what you're saying. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like what if you wanted to say that? Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like as
Yeah.
far as, yeah, just could be like, okay, I'm killing you just because you're gay. Like,
Because of that particular characteristic.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, you know,
Yeah, no, I
there are
understand that.
laws. Yeah, there are laws that protect certain people
Mm.
in that
What
sense,
sorry,
right?
just this is a slight aside. The reason, just to explain my position on that,
Yeah, yeah.
is because I think that, look, if you kill somebody, whether you killed them because they're Black or Jewish or lesbian or trans or what, it's like you killed somebody.
You
So
killed them,
the
right?
punishment is right. So if a hate crime gets a harsher sentence than an equivalent non-hate crime, then to me that just means that the one that wasn't classified as a hate crime wasn't punished harshly enough. See what I
I
mean?
see
Like
what you're saying.
they should all have
I
the
see what
same
you're saying.
penalty. It's the same action,
Yeah, I see
regardless
what
of
you're
the
saying.
motivation.
Same
It's the
same
same
action. It has
action.
to be the same. Yeah, it has to be the same consequence. Same
that's what I think.
consequence. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but just like for the law, like I'm
Sure.
stating what's currently is. But yeah, I think the ideology with that is very divisive.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other question you asked? One of them was like, what
the
do I
other
think about the
question,
LGBT community?
yeah. So the first was about one was about the community. The other question was
Oh,
about
does the T belong in it?
Yeah, the
I
T
think
it means it seems not just the fact that it seems to be presenting as a wedge right now, but
right.
from the beginning, I've always been like, isn't that just a different thing?
It is a different thing. Absolutely. Yeah. I think I don't think it's a bad thing that they're in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it's very different and that might confuse people.
Yeah.
I think it's great when, different communities come together to support each other, but I also
Mm-hmm.
think that people need to understand that we're fighting for different things a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that trans people are included in the LGBT community when they might not be same-sex attracted, they might be, trans women that fully transition and date men, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not, they're complete. They have a vagina. They go and date men.
Yeah.
Yes, chromosomes like they're still XY, but but still they have, you're not attracted to chromosomes. You're not attracted to somebody's chromosomes. You're attracted to their sex characteristics, right? So to me, that would be considered straight.
Okay. It's confusing.
It's very confusing. I know.
Yeah.
But like, I think that they belong, and I think the reason that they were accepted into the movement in the first place, because some of them were the ones that started it in the first
Mm-hmm.
place in Stonewall, but also because I think that in the beginning, people might not have known what dysphoria was, and they just thought of it as cross-dressing.
Mm-hmm.
And since lesbians and gay men tend to break, quote, binaries in that sense already, they were more accepted in that sense.
Gotcha.
So I think they were just kind of like, oh, you're kind of similar to us. Come over.
Mm.
And they're actually not, but I think at the time they might have thought that.
Okay. So
that's my guess. I wasn't alive back then, so I don't know. In the 60s, in the 70s,
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question here, and I have a theory, because you've been talking about the woke left kind of going crazy. Okay. And I have a theory on this of why this may be, and it's not a theory that I've heard many people bring up, and I'm curious to know your take on it. Mm-hmm. This is my belief. In my understanding, I mean, what you just said with some of the employment laws in some places, maybe this might be different here, but it seems to me that from a legal perspective, from a rights perspective, from a true 100%, you can't really argue equality perspective, that at least in the modern Western world, it seems like the legalization of gay marriage was the last genuine sort of rights battle for LGBT people, or the gay people, or whatever you want to say. And I noticed that after that is when this real craziness accelerated. It seems like, okay, if you go back all these previous decades, it's the same thing with some of like the movements, whether it's based around race or based around
like racial segregation,
women's rights, or what. It's like if you go back decades ago, there was always something clear to fight for. Okay? So even if you just go back 15 years ago, it was like, look, we're fighting for the legalization of gay marriage. Okay. Whereas now it's like, okay, like all of these things have been done. Like you've ticked all these boxes. And now in 2020, people are, or if you go back,
they're figuring out something else to fight for.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's because around 2015 is when it seems like around 2015 is when stuff just started really going weird and going sideways.
2015, that's what I say. I say 2014, 2015. Yeah.
And I think it's because you have all these activist-minded people, and they want to fight for something. They want to be part of some movement, but all those movements have already moved. It's happened. It's been done. It's been achieved.
So they're just coming up with new ways. No, I agree with you.
I see the same thing when I see these women's marches, and it's like, we're fighting for women's rights, and I'm like, which ones?
What rights don't you have? Yeah.
Right? If I see someone in the street like saying that they're fighting for Black equality, I'll be like, bro, like what do you mean? Like what specifically, what specifically do you want? When you say equality, what do you mean?
Right.
So I guess, what are your thoughts on that? And then also, I mean, I may have a blind spot here, but is there something that I'm missing? What do you think that society still needs to do, or sort of should do, in that regard?
I agree with you. I think that, I think that most of the rights, in my opinion, most of the rights that we have now, like, are what needed to happen. And I think that all these
Mm,
organizations, I think like the HRC and stuff like that, um, they don't know where to go from here.
yeah.
Um,
For the
I
first
think
time.
trans rights do have a way to go,
Okay. In what
but
sense?
because just like legalizing hormones and stuff like that, and allowing people to change their gender if they have physically transitioned and stuff like that. There's a few things, getting them the medical necessary treatment if it is deemed um, a medical condition by a physician, stuff like that. Some of these things do have a way to go still, and it
Hmm.
takes time. But I think because the words transgender and queer and whatever and gender have been watered down, it's becoming impossible to set boundaries and on definitions, and people, like, for people to know what they're fighting for even.
Yeah.
And there's it becomes an infight. It becomes it becomes infighting, one side of the community versus the other. When I
Mm,
say community, it's like lightly, just anyone that identifies as LGBT.
yeah.
um that is LGBT. I hate the word identifies, but I say it for context. But it's like, no, I don't identify as lesbian. Like, I'm a woman that likes
You
women. Like,
are.
I just
Yeah, yeah.
am a lesbian.
You just are.
You can identify as like an artist, like, I guess. I don't know what you can identify as. Or like emo. Okay, I can identify as emo, like, or something. That's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's like an identifier for me. But I don't know. I don't know where we need to go. I think you've said it best. I think we've gotten so far ahead that we've like reversed ourselves
Yeah, that's
because
exactly
we
what
don't
I
know where
feel.
else to go.
Yeah, that's literally what I feel. Like
Yeah.
I said, I mean, I'm not in any way, shape, or form part of the inverted commas community, but
Right.
a lot of these trans activists in particular, they seem to be doing a disservice as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know if I'm not someone who feels like I need to be in a position to speak on something, but like that's my observation when they're pushing to transition little children and put them on hormones, when they're
Mm-hmm.
pushing to allow biological men in women's sports and women's prisons. And I'm like, look, I
No.
don't think, there aren't from the trans people I have actually met or who follow me, um, they
Most of them
don't.
agree with us.
Yes, they
I
agree with
know.
me, right? I
I
did
know.
when my deadlift tweet was going viral. Everyone who was offended, like none of them were actually trans. It was
None
just
of them.
no.
No.
I had actual trans followers who were like, "Yo, that is so funny." Um,
Because they know
yeah, yeah,
that they're the
and
rational people. Like, there are, like, most of my haters aren't trans. They're young kids who don't know what the hell they're doing with their lives, which is fine.
yeah,
Because who the hell knew when I was like, I didn't know when I was 15 what I wanted to do in my life. But I didn't hate on other people or like try to be like a super woke person to make myself feel more validated in the world.
mm,
I went out there and actually did stuff,
yeah,
actively did stuff to help change, the world. I
yeah,
did community service. I joined, softball teams and became a part of something
mm,
instead of
mm.
just yelling at everybody for doing it wrong
Yeah. I
in the
just
way
think
you
it's a
think is
shame
wrong.
because I think, look, most people don't
Sorry.
know or meet any trans people. Like, let's be honest. Most people do not know anybody who's actually trans.
Right.
So when people are seeing or hearing about it, it always seems to be something to do with the sports thing or like
Mm-hmm.
or the language policing and all this stuff. And I think it does a disservice to a lot of people who probably, I imagine, just kind of want to get on with
Live
their
their life.
lives and not
Mm-hmm.
be worried about getting beaten up as they walk down the street or not
Yep.
be harassed or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the weird thing. I'm just like, aren't you doing the people you claim you're standing up for? In my view, it seems like you're doing them a disservice because now so many people
100%.
are just like, oh my gosh, these trans people are crazy because
Yeah. Oh, it's
that's what they
100%.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why my friend, one of my friends, Buck Angel, who's a transsexual, he calls himself a transsexual.
Hmm.
He's like, I refuse to tell anybody that I'm trans or
Yeah.
transgender. He's
I
like,
know who
I
that
do
is.
not. Yeah, he's awesome. He's like, I do not use those words anymore. And I was like, girl, like, I get, and I mean that, like, not like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he's a
Yeah.
girl, but like, girl, like, it's
Don't say
a,
it. Don't say it on
in the
Twitter.
gay,
Don't say
I
it
know,
on
in the
Twitter.
gay, right, in the gay community, it's like a,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, I'm showing you love. But the same thing is like black people or like people from Brooklyn, they'd be like, yo, fam,
Yeah. Yeah.
the same thing, girl. But I get it. I was like, I told him, I was like, I understand why you are separating yourself from that word or from those two words, because most people that identify as trans are these like the crazy, irrational, it's like a mob. And he's like, listen, I transitioned. He's like, I physically transitioned to the best of my ability and am seen in the world as a man. Like if you look at him, you would never think he was born female.
No, not at all.
There's no way. And that doesn't mean that people that don't pass as well aren't also valid. Like they're doing their best and they still have that mental component to them that makes them different. But like, again, make some effort. Make an effort. And don't just like wear some pink hair. and it's funny that I say that because if you go on TikTok, literally every kid that identifies as like non-binary doesn't have any dysphoria from what I can tell. And they just change the way that they change their hair. Like they're the new emo. And that it's okay to be emo, but don't try to ruin LGBT actual progression because you want to be cool.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's
the big divide in the community.
Yeah, the big problem, I'll tell you what, this split, people keep talking left, right, liberal, conservative. I think the split is a lot more, laissez-faire, sort of like, do what you want, just don't infringe on other people. And then the more sort of authoritarian minded people who want to control others and police their speech and their language and anything they say that steps out of line or with what you want. It's almost like blasphemy laws, right? I'm a Christian myself.
100%.
Be like me, anytime someone says, uses the Lord's name in vain, like I just pop up out of there and I'm like, hey, you can't do that. I send my report them on Twitter or, hey, you use profanity there, I'm going to jump. And it's just like, there's a lot of us in the world and we need to find a way to get on with each other. So can we just, we've made some really good headway. So can we just sort of chill a bit and not undo all of this stuff
all the stuff that's been done? Yeah.
Awesome. I'm looking at the time, Arielle. This is a conversation we could have for a while, and I definitely want to have you on here again. But
for sure.
I've already overrun my usual time. I actually wanted to find out a little bit more about your own sort of like personal life and journey and story and everything like that. But I know we sort of jumped like right in there, so it feels sort of
we jump right into the deep.
Do it right at
stuff.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. But why don't you let the listeners know where they can find you online?
Just search my name, Arielle, Arielle, and my last name is Scarcella, Scarcella, and
awesome.
It'll come up.
That's cool.
I'm YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah.
That's cool. And before we go, is there anything you wanted to let people know, or anything you want to drop in there that you may not have had a chance to?
The only thing I could say is like there's a lot of projects up that are coming up that I'm working with more, seemingly conservative people to show that
it begins.
They're not it's true. Well, to show that I've already done this, but I haven't publicly stated it. Like I've worked with Blair White, and I love her, but now I'm actually like being like, okay, this is why I'm actually reaching out to this person, because they're conservative, not just like it's not an afterthought. It's like specifically for that reason.
Okay.
Because I think they get a lot more hate than is necessary. And the same goes for somebody like me, obviously. I don't think I deserve all the hate I get. I don't think anyone deserves hate. I think we just all need to try to be a little bit nicer to each other and listen. Yeah, I think you and I have probably listened to these people for years, and we're fed up. And now it's time for me to listen to the other side, and I'm listening. I'm gonna listen, and from what I've seen, I haven't really seen any. I'm telling you the truth. If you go on my Twitter and you go all the people that identify as conservatives, they're like, we don't care that you're gay.
Yeah.
Just leave us the hell alone. Don't try to change the way I speak about. It's true. It's like, don't try to change the way I talk about things. Don't take away my rights. And I'm like, I'm not trying to take away your rights. I don't want to do it,
Yeah.
And I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Like gays getting married or having jobs doesn't take away anybody else's rights, but
no. And I think I think it took a while for people to come around to that, like everything does.
Right.
But the fact is that they generally have. So
I think they have.
I think people need to stop sort of beating people over the head with something that maybe was assigned to that label, sort of, maybe even 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. I mean, I know a lot of conservatives just don't even think that the government should be involved in marriage and weddings, because a lot of the concern around it, especially from religious people, is, the idea that a church, a synagogue, a mosque shouldn't be forced to conduct the service that they
I agree with that.
fundamentally don't agree with. That was actually like a big part of the thing. It wasn't like, again, it wasn't based in hatred or like wanting stuff to be super unfair. It was just like, well, if you give the government control of this thing, they can now force institutions that, religious institutions that may not agree with this to do it. Funnily enough, if you use the example of a mosque, people get it better, because for whatever reason, Islam is sort of this protected class in the West. So if you're like, okay, you shouldn't force a mosque to do it, people are like, okay, fair enough. If you say a church, they tend to be like, oh, well, churches should just do it anyway. And I'm like, well,
oppression points.
Yeah. Awesome. Arielle, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really good getting to know you.
Thank you. I'll see you on Twitter.
Likewise.
Thank you, babe. Bye.
Bye-bye.